Trump and Putin hold joint press conference, but there's no deal on ending the Ukraine war. Zelensky will be meeting with Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. next Monday. And Chris Sun said the fact people come to Hong Kong through the top talent scheme do not necessarily mean they become permanent residents. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Donald Trump hosted Vladimir Putin in one of the most anticipated presidential summits in years. The U.S. president has vowed to end the war in Ukraine and hoped to take a huge step towards that pledge in 3-hour negotiations with his Russian counterpart in Alaska. A deal is not yet agreed. David Garrett begins our coverage.
Known as Russia's command point, the equivalent of Air Force One, taking President Vladimir Putin to a summit with US President Donald Trump in Alaska. A red carpet for Putin's first steps on US soil in 10 years, ahead of talks aimed at stopping the Ukraine war, starting with a handshake on the tarmac.
President Putin, will you stop killing civilians?
The two leaders were whisked away in Trump's presidential limousine, the Beast. They know each other well and were ready for what would be 3 hours of talks. So, a warming of relations between two of the world's biggest powers in Alaska. Frozen out by Trump's predecessor, Joe Biden, Putin welcomed to America by Trump under the banner Pursuing Peace. Putin and Trump facing a barrage of questions.
President Putin, why should President Trump trust your word now?
Neither leader responded. There followed a press conference which again saw a refusal to answer reporters by either president as Putin spoke of the nations as neighbors.
Negotiations that were quite useful. I would like to thank once again my American counterpart for the proposal to travel out here to Alaska. It only makes sense that we've met here because our countries, though separated by the oceans, are close neighbors. So when we've met, when I came out of the plane and I've said, "Good afternoon, dear neighbor. Very good to see you. In good health and to see you alive." There have been no summits between Russia and the U.S. for 4 years, and that's a long time. This time was very hard for bilateral relations, and let's be frank, they have fallen to the lowest point since the Cold War. I think that's not benefiting our countries and the world as a whole. It is apparent that sooner or later we had to amend the situation to move on from the confrontation to dialogue. And in this case, a personal meeting between the heads of state has been long overdue.
Putin says he wants peace, but the primary reason for the Ukraine war starting, threats to Russia's security, remain. He handed over by saying that Trump was right. If he had been president instead of Biden, the war would not have started.
We had an extremely productive meeting, and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant. But we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there. I would like to thank President Putin and his entire team. We'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you.
Putin and Trump agreeing to continue communication, working on a deal in pursuit of peace. David Garrett, TVB News.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he held a conversation with Donald Trump on Saturday after the Trump-Putin summit ended without an agreement to end the war. Trump confirmed that Zelensky would travel to Washington, D.C. Monday afternoon to meet him in person in the Oval Office. Danny Zhou has the report.
Zelensky said in a statement that he had a long and substantive talk with Trump one-on-one before other European leaders were invited to take part, adding that they supported Trump's proposal for a trilateral meeting between Ukraine, the US and Russia. According to Zelensky, the topics covered in the 1.5-hour conversations include details of ending Russia's war and killing in Ukraine, as well as positive signals from the American side to participate in guaranteeing Ukraine's security. The Ukrainian president emphasized the significance of Europe's involvement at every stage to ensure reliable security guarantees together with America. European leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen, have vowed to continue support for Ukraine while maintaining pressure on Russia. No limitations should be placed on Ukraine's armed forces or on its cooperation with third countries, they wrote in a statement. Russia cannot have a veto against Ukraine's pathway to EU and NATO. A meeting of ambassadors representing all 27 member states of EU was also held on Saturday to discuss the next steps. A US analyst pointed out Trump's meeting with Putin in Alaska offers a glimmer of hope about the future, and it's the first step on what could be a long journey. He suggested the one big issue that was not handled in the meeting was probably about territory.
The concern is that the pressure will go on to Zelensky to give up territory to make an end to the conflict and get it over with, as Trump would say. The Ukrainians are very reluctant to give up territory. Now they're in a tough spot because the Russians occupy about 16% of Ukraine. So claiming that they will only accept a complete Russian withdrawal is just not realistic, unfortunately. I think they will resist giving up any additional territory. But there are so
Danny Zhou, TVB News.
Secretary for Labour and Welfare Chris Sun says the fact people come to Hong Kong through the Top Talent Scheme does not necessarily mean they become permanent residents. Sun said there should be no rigid requirement for top talent to reside in Hong Kong. 54% of applicants have applied for a renewal more than 2 years after the Top Talent Scheme was launched. Sun noted of the 46% who did not apply for renewal, some might not have met the requirements. 1/3 of high talent who successfully renewed their applications do not ordinarily reside in Hong Kong. Sun noted there should be no rigid requirement for talent to reside in Hong Kong. He said the government cannot impose a fixed limit on how many days a person must stay, as Hong Kong is an open city. He said if people work in trading, finance, or innovation in technology, they need to travel frequently, and forcibly confining them to Hong Kong will prevent them from creating value. The Government Logistics Department had partially terminated a contract for supplying bottled drinking water to some government offices. The department said it was not satisfied that the supplier would still be capable of performing the contract and has referred the case to police for investigation. It is understood the company has been accused of infringing the rights of another firm by putting on that firm's labels. Samantha Lee tells us more.
In June, the Government Logistics Department awarded a contract for supplying bottled drinking water to government offices on Hong Kong Island and some outlying islands to a company called Xinding Xin Trade Company Limited. The contract was supposed to last for 36 months. Having received information on the supplier's business operation recently, the department said it doubted if the company would still be capable of fulfilling the contract. The department decided to partially terminate the contract. The department reported the case to police and arranged the A.S. Watson Group Limited to supply bottled drinking water temporarily. Earlier tests by government laboratories showed water samples from government offices are safe to drink. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
Hong Kong has so far recorded 9 imported cases of chikungunya fever, and the number of imported cases continue to increase. Secretary for Environment and Ecology Tse Chin-wen said he expects imported cases will continue to increase and local cases cannot be ruled out. He said the government will continue to strengthen mosquito control measures. Tse said the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department will actively conduct mosquito control measures in collaboration with other departments. He said, for example, the Housing Department is carrying out such work in public housing estates. The Leisure and Cultural Services Department is doing so at its premises. And other departments such as the Highways Department and the Drainage Services Department are also involved. And still ahead, Foreign Minister Wang Yi will visit India next Monday. An area of low pressure in the north central of South China Sea could develop into a tropical cyclone. And a look back at the first 100 days of Pope Leo. Welcome back. Foreign Minister Wang Yi will visit India from next Monday to Wednesday for talks on the disputed border in the Himalayas. Wang will be holding the 24th round of talks between the special representatives of China and India on the boundary question. It will be their second high-level meeting since the deadly skirmishes that broke out between Chinese and Indian troops in 2020. An agreement struck last October on patrolling arrangements along the Himalayan border has helped to ease years of standoff. Wang's trip comes ahead of Indian leader Narendra Modi's visit to China later in August, his first visit in 7 years. Modi is expected to meet President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit. A union representing some 10,000 flight attendants at Air Canada has called for a strike, leading to flight interruptions. Some flights traveling between Hong Kong and Canada were cancelled. Information from the airport authority shows 4 flights connecting Hong Kong and Canada today and tomorrow were cancelled. Air Canada says passengers who have booked to travel from August 15th to 19th will be able to change their flights to another date between August 21st and September 12th for free, if they purchase the tickets no later than August 14th. The airline will rebook affected passengers on another flight, including those operated by other airlines. Passengers can also choose a refund. The strike began after Air Canada and its flight attendants failed to agree on the wages. The Hong Kong Observatory says an area of low pressure located in the north-central part of the South China Sea could develop into a tropical cyclone. It will decide as early as midnight whether to issue a tropical cyclone warning. The weather held fair in most parts of Hong Kong today, with the mercury having climbed to 32 degrees Celsius or above in many districts in the afternoon. But the city might be bracing for worsening conditions. The Hong Kong Observatory says a broad trough of low pressure over the central and northern parts of the South China Sea is gradually intensifying and appears to be developing into a tropical cyclone. The system is expected to edge generally northwards towards Hainan Island and the coast of western Guangdong over the next 1 or 2 days. Depending on its intensity and distance from Hong Kong, the observatory will assess the need to issue a tropical cyclone warning signal. HKO scientific officer says the forecaster is anticipating local winds will intensify under the combined influence of the low pressure area and the ridge of high pressure in southeastern China. According to the present forecast track, occasional strong winds offshore and on high ground are expected on Sunday. Squally thunderstorms and showers are expected starting Sunday with rough seas. The unsettled weather is here to stay Monday through Tuesday. The showers will ease off with improved weather conditions by the middle to the end of next week. The passing out parade of a new batch of 163 auxiliary police officers was held at the Kowloon West Auxiliary Police Headquarters. There are 6 newly promoted auxiliary police inspectors, including a scientific officer from the Department of Health. The newly minted inspector from the DOH says he gains more exposure beyond his government desk job, including law and weapons-related knowledge. This year's intake also includes 98 auxiliary constables from the university student scheme. The World Humanoid Robot Games continued in Beijing. The event doesn't just showcase booths and demonstrations of robotic flair, but also offers opportunities for spectators to engage and spar with the humanoids. Some visitors faced off against the robots in ping-pong side matches. Just months ago, some of these robots' efforts ended in stumbles and mishaps. Today, they sprint, spar, and play with a bit more grace. Teams from abroad, including Australia, also joined the robotic extravaganza to compete in AI-controlled 5-on-5 futsal matches. They came hoping to take home more than medals, gaining a sneak peek of China's robotic know-how.
Come to another place and embrace the culture around the sport, and yeah, it's awesome. Love it. And one of my hopes is that one day in Australia we have something like this. I think the population would love to see what's going on here.
China's Shenzhou 20 astronauts aboard the Tiangong space station completed their 3rd round of spacewalks. The astronauts conducted vital inspections during the 6.5 hours of external activities. Chen Dong and Wang Jie, who took the spacewalk, had the assistance of the robotic arm and the ground control team. The pair carried out the installation of debris protection devices, as well as the inspection and maintenance of equipment. They returned to the Tianhe core module at 10:47 p.m. Beijing time after completing all tasks. The main goal was to identify thermal characteristics of key equipment and critical components. Better understanding of their operational conditions and collection of detailed data can support future spacecraft design. Pope Leo XIV is marking his first 100 days as pontiff today. Daniel Rao reports.
Pope Leo XIV, who marks his 100th day as Pope on Saturday, will spend the weekend in the countryside, breaking on Sunday to have lunch with the poor people of the Albano diocese. He's scheduled to return to the Vatican on Tuesday, closing out a 6-week holiday period, punctuated by spells back at the Vatican. On Friday, the Pope prayed for a peaceful end to the increasingly deafening violence of wars around the world, as he celebrated a Catholic feast day on the same day as the high-stakes US-Russia summit over the war in Ukraine. Leo, the first American Pope in history, didn't mention the meeting between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. However, he recalled that the dogma surrounding Sunday's feast day dedicated to the Virgin Mary was declared by Pope Pius XII at the height of World War II. The Pope said he hoped human lives would never again be destroyed by wars. He prayed, though, for hope in a peaceful future. He said we must not resign ourselves to the prevalence of the logic of armed conflict. In the early stages of his pontificate, Leo seems eager above all to avoid controversy and wants instead to focus on Christ and peace. That seems exactly what many Catholic faithful want and may respond to what today's church needs. The Pope has met prominent political figures such as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and US Vice President J.D. Vance.
Holy Father, hello, good morning. Good morning, how are you? A couple of things. First of all, this is a letter from the President and the First Lady inviting you.
Leo's signature issue confronting the promise and peril posed by artificial intelligence is something conservatives and progressives alike agree is important. The late Pope Francis's emphasis on caring for the environment and migrants often alienated conservatives. Leo, though, has cemented Francis's environmental legacy by celebrating the first ever ecologically inspired Mass. Daniel, TV News.
A fireworks and light show illuminated the gardens of the iconic Palace of Fzai in France. As night fell, crowds were treated to a beautiful show of artistry and imagery. The fire performer showed off his skills as sparks flew. The glowing fountains burst into the sky to the sound of classical music. It is all part of a new drive to get tourists to revisit Versailles and see the palace grounds, quite literally in a different light. It's the 5th year organizers have done this, with 16,000 in attendance this time. This extra show marks Christianity's Feast of the Assumption, as performances continue to enrapture crowds. Fireworks were set off overhead, accompanied by drones as part of the modern show in this ancient setting. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.